Going live on YouTube. Streaming live on YouTube. This is 911 asthma double football player. Severe asthma attack. Man dies saving a drowning boy.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened.
Now, Rescue 911 on True Crime Network. Next, Dr. T Medical Examiner.
In the middle of the night.
With asthma, what happens is the bronchioles or the air passages in your lungs spasm closed, and no air can get through one way or the other. The same as somebody putting a pillow over your face. Obviously, what happens is you suffocate, and that results in death.
I guess it's the guy that has asthma, not
I woke
his
up
wife.
and the lights were on. He was making a little bit of noise, and I saw him hunched over, his hands on his knees. You know, boom, I knew just like that, and I was out of bed. I never expected this type of attack. I guess the thought never crossed my mind that he, you know, hey, he might stop breathing.
Tina Freeman's 20-year-old fiancé, Jeff Byleth, was suffering the most severe.
Oh, so they're not married. They were in bed together, sleeping,
I could just tell that
but they were engaged.
Yeah.
You can tell certain tones of voices. Tina had the tone of voice that said help immediately.
Part-time dispatcher Jim Van Buren passed on the information for dispatch.
Okay, I've got the ambulance on the way, but I want to keep doing the telephone, okay? Is he breathing right now? Hardly. Okay. Can you hear him making sounds? Yeah. It's okay. Okay. What color is his skin? Okay, that's okay. Calm down. You have to calm down if we're going to help you. Okay. Calm down. Talk to me. What's he doing right now? Okay, can you see his chest moving?
When we continue,
I've got to get Tina to get some air into Jeff to keep brain damage from occurring. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's not going to make it.
Burn. Are you here? And I need her.
Okay, listen, then you're going to have to breathe forward because you're not breathing. Okay, listen to me. Is he right next to you right now? Okay, can you get the telephone and you right next to him? Okay, listen to me. Listen to me. Grab him and drag him to the telephone. Do that. Do not hang up.
she
She's still on the verge of panic, because you can hear her crying in the background as she's trying to drag Jeff to the telephone.
Okay, are you right next to him? Okay. Can he hear you? Can you? Okay, is his chest moving?
It was a very scary situation. He's only got 4 minutes before brain damage starts to set in. After 6 minutes, irreversible brain damage is imminent. I'm thinking the ambulance isn't going to be there for 10 minutes yet, because they were out in the boondocks, so to speak.
Do you know, is there anyone else there that knows how to do round the clock? Okay, listen to me. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you how to do round the clock. Is there a pillow under his head? Okay, good. Okay, no, don't get one. Listen to me. Listen to me. No, he's not. Now calm down. Put his head back. Take his nose close. Okay, completely cover his mouth with your mouth. Okay? And force 2 deep breaths into his lungs. Can you feel air going into his chest? No, it's not. Okay, is his chest rising when you do that? Okay, what's he doing? Is his eyes open? No. Okay, then let's do it again.
I've got to get Tina to get some air into Jeff to keep brain damage from occurring. And I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't make it.
Okay, did he try to take a breath on his own? Yes. What happened when he tried to take a breath on his own? It's like his heart pumping off. Like his heart pumping? Yes. Is he trying to take another breath on his own? Yes. Is he getting any air in?
I asked her, well, what's he do after you give him a breath? Well, he opens his mouth and sticks out his tongue, an unconscious way of saying, help, I need more air. So I knew he's still in dire straits. So I had her continue the breathing for him.
Okay, now, what I want you to do is I want you, Tina, to try to check his pulse. Do you know where to take the pulse in the neck? Check pulse. Do you feel a pulse? Okay, count it. Start counting. When I tell you to stop, you tell me what you came up with. Go.
I had her count for about 15 seconds.
Okay, stop. Good, that's great. Is he conscious? No. Okay, but he's still breathing? Okay, I'm gonna keep you on the phone until the ambulance gets there. Now, this is what we're gonna do from this point on. I want you to breathe into him 1 time every 5 seconds. So you breathe and then count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, breathe. That's okay, Tina, you're breathing for him. They're on their way. They are on their way. Okay, all on their way. Okay. You expect you, they're running like a bad outlaw. Can you see his chest move when you blow into him? Okay, Tina, you did a good job. I'm gonna let you go now. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Within 12 minutes of Tina's call for help, first responders and paramedics arrived.
His skin color was very, very poor. He was gray, his lips were cyanotic or purple. His pupils were dilated and non-reactive, which, are all signs that he has not had a lot of oxygen.
Paramedics Don Dickens and Mary Beesbrock both worked on Jeff.
I've had other calls where they've been severe like this, but they haven't made it. Tina kept Jeff alive up until we got there and took over and put the tube down to his lungs and began to breathe for him.
1, 2, 3, up.
They said he was gonna live, but he could have brain damage because we don't know how long he was without oxygen. And I'm thinking, just let him live. That's all I'm asking, just let him live.
His condition was very critical. Some of the numbers that we use as far as laboratory tests to determine a person's status when they have a respiratory arrest, some of those numbers in Jeff were barely compatible with life.
Dr. Stephen Crocker treated Jeff, but the outcome is still uncertain.
He started to wake up, and he was conscious, and I could just tell, this is my Jeff, same guy.
I
woke up in the hospital bed, very dizzy, disoriented. And it was scary at that point. I still didn't know exactly what had happened.
In most communities, dispatchers are not trained to give first aid information over the phone. In many dispatch centers, it's not even allowed. For Holland, Michigan, it was a new program.
The first few minutes are the absolute critical time. And the outcome depends heavily on that.
The dispatcher is the first link of
I'm
help.
glad Jeff's
Because now I can
gonna
tell
be
this
okay,
person
cause now
to do
he and
CPR.
his
If the
girlfriend,
public can
fiance
start
are
CPR,
walking
the
down the
chances of
street
survival are
and they're
greater.
shopping.
Jeff and
It
Tina
must be at
plan to be
Christmas
married
time.
soon.
We rely on each other a lot more. It's brought us closer together, you know, looking out for the other person, you know. We have to take care of each other.
Each year, more than 5,000 people die of asthma attacks. Most would have survived if they'd been treated in time. Next,
I just reached out my hand so he could grab it and I could pull him back, but the current was going so fast and my feet just went out from under me.
coming up next on True Crime. He'd impressed him with this. The people in Jerry Anderson's hometown in Tennessee had always known he was someone special. For more than 20 years, he'd impressed them with his toughness on the football field, his kindness off it, and his courage in both arenas. Actors have helped us reconstruct the tragic events that began on May 27th of this year.
Before he saved the little boy, he was a hero to me. I first met him at the University of Oklahoma. He was real nice, real nice. He would offer me tickets to go to the game. I said, no, you have enough cheerleaders there. We dated for 6 months, then we got married.
A college football star, Jerry went on to play in the NFL until a knee injury ended his career.
He was always the kind of person that would reach out to people. If anything happened, he thought he could fix it.
On Memorial Day weekend in 1984, Tulsa, Oklahoma was devastated by the Great Flood. Jerry was caught in the floodwaters, but he still managed to find a way to help someone else.
A car was floating down the street and 2 girls on it. Said I saved one of them, but I couldn't get the other one. He said I had her, but she was fighting with me, panicking.
Severe asthma attack. Man dies saving a drowning boy. So must be Jerry, the football player,
But that was on
dies.
Jerry's mind, though.
Not a lot of people
He said
die
another
on Rescue
guy, his van
911.
turned over. He couldn't swim. And Jerry grabbed him and put him on top of his van.
But there
I
was
asked him, I said,
there was a
"Jerry,
diver
you
that
something?"
died.
He says, Mama, he said, if you
Kate
heard the
diver.
cry from the people
Not
that
all
were
of them
out there
made
in
it
the
up.
water."
Jerry was a hero, but the woman he could not save continued to haunt him even after he moved back to his hometown of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It was 5 years later to the day.
I was in the front yard.
Maybe Jerry didn't die. Maybe it was somebody else.
And asked permission to go fishing in the river. And of course I said yes.
I've never seen this episode.
Everyone knew there was good fishing on the Stones River behind Police Lieutenant Johnny Mosby's house. Though the river was still swollen from recent rains, 12-year-old Pooh McFarland and Brad Logston had also decided to go fish on it.
We were just casting out and didn't catch anything really.
Dwight Ogleton's family was good friends with Jerry Anderson.
I knew Jerry from church, and just one day I asked him, could we go fishing? He said, sure. We went down there, we was fishing for a while. We didn't catch anything really. And Pooh said they catch a lot of fish that went through the other side. When we walked out, we had a scooter feet across the dam. If you lifted up your foot, the current would take your foot away. About halfway, I didn't want to keep on going. I wanted to turn around, but we just kept on going. We saw this big branch coming down towards us. I just reached out my hand so he could grab it and I could pull him back, but the current was going so fast and my feet just went out from under me and I just went off. And I swam back and got home to the other side of the dam. Mr. Anderson dove in upstream and swam down across the dam towards Pooh.
Dwight ran to get Lieutenant Mosby. Francis Mosby went to call for help.
I saw my husband was starting to run toward the river, so I ran inside and called 911.
Sergeant Byron Motley took her call.
I notified all the other people I thought we might need out there, the ambulance service. And after I got all that into motion, I said, well, I may as well go out myself.
I heard screams, and I looked out and saw Mr. Mosby running to the river. And when I arrived at the river, there was a little boy fighting for his life.
Jerry Melton was terrified to see how high and rough the river was.
I kept hollering and screaming, come toward me, come toward me. And he was just fighting, and the more he paddled, the more the current took him back.
Pooh seemed to be trapped in a kind of whirlpool.
I noticed the young man wasn't moving, and it appeared that Jerry was in trouble out there also. I ran back to my police unit and immediately called the dispatcher and advised her to send the rescue squad.
Jerry Anderson had him cradled in his arms and gave him a toss, enough to get him out of the whirlpool.
All at once, he flipped over, looked like come to or something. Then he began to swim out.
Are you all right? You okay?
I never knew Jerry was in trouble. He never indicated that he was in trouble. He never made any motions. He was like waiting to see that the McFarland boy was secured. After the child was secured, Jerry went under. And I thought he was going to swim out underwater. But then Jerry came back up in the same spot and he went under again. And I watched him go down for the third time.
Officer Dale Robinson arrived within 4 minutes of the call.
I drove the car straight down to the riverbank. Lieutenant Mosby had a life jacket on and was getting ready to go out in the water himself, but he can't swim. I took off my uniform shirt, my gun belt, and my shoes. I got the life jacket from Lieutenant Mosby, and I thought if we could get to him quick enough, we might be able to do some good. I looked up the river, and a neighbor was coming from upriver in a canoe. I proceeded to get on out in the water to where Lieutenant Mosby...
Maybe Jerry did die.
This person go under.
As it said, man dies trying to save drowning boys, so
Come up and grab the side of the canoe to get my breath.
that's why I think there's a death in this story. But I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's Jerry, a football player.
The person that they were looking for was Jerry Anderson. Jerry has been a good friend of mine. Knowing Jerry, you know, he would do anything he could to help anybody, especially kids. He was real interested in kids. And when I found out...
If Jerry did pass away, saving the drowning boy, I hope he's up in heaven.
I honestly didn't expect to find him out there and doing like I was doing, but I thought we had to try. I went down here in the same spot and I kicked something with my foot. I went under with my left hand and I grabbed what I'd kicked, and it was Mr. Anderson's arm. I came back up and I pulled his arm up. It's the first time I realized that it was a grown man that I was looking for.
As soon as they got him out of the water, the paramedics began resuscitation efforts.
We wanted to go down there. We thought he was conscious. And we wanted to go down there and say thank you, but they wouldn't let us. Well, I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel good at all. I felt like it was my fault.
One of those children said, the last words he said when he jumped in there was, go call my mom. And I thought that was kind of strange, and someone did. And she came, and it was bad. When Miss Brandon got there, they restrained her, and she was kicking and screaming and hollering death calls. She was wanting to get down there.
Estelle Brandon had not been told why she was wanted down at the river that day.
I knew that they knew Jerry was dead. Guess why? They didn't let me go with him in the ambulance.
His mother called, and I could barely understand her. She was hollering and screaming. She said, I think Jerry's dead. And I couldn't even talk, and I had to beat my chest.
Since Jerry, the football player, passed away, I know he's up in heaven.
And her daddy is dead.
35-year-old Jerry Anderson was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital.
Well, I had a dream about him one night, and it was like real life, you know. He just walked through the door and smiled. And it was so odd because he had on a white veil-looking shirt. And I was telling my mother about it. She said, he's an angel. And when you give up your life for another life, you go to heaven.
Jerry Anderson did not go in that water because he saw my son or some little kid that he knew in trouble. Jerry Anderson went in that water because he saw a human being in trouble. I'm glad Jerry was there. And what he's done, there's no greater sacrifice that could be made. There's no way to heap the honors on the man that really would justify what he's done.
He really didn't know us, and he still risked his life for poo. Thanks for diving in for my friend.
Hey, I just got a text from my sister. Sure. You remember Rick, her neighbor?
Sure.
Parrot saves family from fumes. Freak accident. So the Teen Angel would be the freak accident segment. And then Parrot Save would be Parrot saves family from fumes. Next, Rescue 911.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events
WFAA 8.3 Dallas, Texas.
On June 8, 1990, Debbie O'Mara, her husband Patrick, and their 2 children
Next,
were
Rescue
driving to the
911
farmlands
on
of
True
central
Crime
Michigan,
Network.
miles away from home.
We were on our way to a family reunion. We were traveling down M50 and came up behind a white vehicle. My husband and I were just talking, and the kids, who knows, they were probably squabbling like they usually do.
Also traveling north on the narrow country road were Henry Dumonceau and his wife Maxine.
We were 15 miles from Charlotte. When I said, "Bill, I'm getting hungry," and he said, "Well, when we get into Charlotte, we'll stop and get something to eat."
There was an oncoming semi coming toward us, which we didn't really think much about. You know, we have semis pass you all the time. We, of course, realized that he had been hit, and the car immediately started coming off, off the side of the road.
It wasn't going to stop by itself, I could see that. So I threw it in park after it hit the brake and saw this man sprawled out in the seat in agony.
I looked in her door, and he was just covered with blood.
Hey, he's hurt bad. Stay here, I'll go get help.
When we continue,
When I first got there, he was just covered with blood, and I got nervous. But I knew that this man's life was in my hands.
With so many school shootings happening in our culture, it's more important than ever to be there for children. Pay attention to changes in your child's eating habits, sleeping habits, and personality. If you notice changes, inquire with them why. Openly discuss their fears and offer ideas on how to reduce their concerns. We cannot underestimate the impact school shootings are having on our children. So stay alert and be safe.
while Debbie O'Mara stayed at the scene, her husband Patrick went for help.
There was blood everywhere. I mean, just an extraordinary amount of blood was coming from a chest wound.
Speed was going to be the most important thing, and getting help as fast as possible, because I knew the guy was in bad shape.
He happened to stop at the home of Bernie Edgell and his 16-year-old daughter, Shannon.
At first, I started to call the ambulance, and my father said, "I'll do it, I'll take over," because he knew the number.
Is there anyone on the doing first aid?
I thought, well, I have to go down there because I know first aid, and I need to do something. I went in the bathroom and grabbed some towels and rags to take down to the scene with me because I didn't have my first aid kit, and I didn't know what I'd need, but something just told me to take that.
We received a call from Meade County Central Dispatch.
Now,
for a
Rescue
personal injury
911 on
accident.
True Crime
We were
Network.
Approximately 15 miles to the scene, quite a great distance from the hospital.
Next, Rescue 911 on True Crime Network.
Shannon had just completed a high school first aid class 2 days earlier.
And she came running toward me and said, "I've had first aid." And she got in there, she says, "We gotta open his shirt up. Do you have a pair of scissors?" And I said, "Well," I says, "Pat's probably got a knife."
Let's get it. Here you go. Here you go.
When I first got there, I thought, oh my gosh, he was just covered with blood, and I got nervous. But I knew that this man's life was in my hands. I couldn't tell exactly where the wound was without taking the shirt off so I could get the pressure exactly right over the wound.
I was amazed. She acted like she knew what she was doing, and I, thought she was a off-duty paramedic. I would have never thought she was that young.
I could hear that he was having respiratory problems, and it sounded to me like fluids were in his throat, and then sometimes his breathing would almost stop, and I'd say, "Breathe, breathe." He'd take a big gasp, and he'd start breathing again.
Sheriff's Deputy Kevin Herring was the first official on the scene.
I was in the Lansing area when they put the call out, and I immediately went code 1 and responded. It took me approximately 5 minutes to get there. Grabbing the first aid kit, I went around to the passenger side of the vehicle.
But we've always called me.
I get under the front seat and then realized that nothing in the first aid kit was going to be big enough. It looked like something had come through the windshield. It opened him up, probably a grapefruit-sized hole in his chest, just about as hard. At that point, it didn't look good for him at all. It's a fine line between life and death, and you don't really realize that until you're actually working on someone that is that close to death.
Almost 15 minutes had passed since Henry Dumas had suffered the freak accident.
She may have been scared. I believe maybe we both were at the time, but you don't have time to think about it. You just do what you have to do.
Patrick said that they could see the ambulance coming down the road, and I told Henry, and he said, I can't hold on any longer, I just want to die, just let me die. And
See, the thing says Justice Network,
he held on for so long.
8.3 Dallas,
I said,
Texas,
don't give up now.
but it's
No,
actually
don't
True
give
Crime
up.
Network now. I wish Philo would add True Crime Network to their channel. Wish they'd add True Crime Network, Dabble Network.
This is gonna be one of those ones that I'm gonna feel for a long time. I really didn't expect him to make it. When we took his initial vital signs, his blood pressure was 60. It was so low we couldn't hear it with the stethoscope. He had lost so much blood that it was very critical to get a large amount of fluid into him quickly, because we were afraid that Hank was going to go into cardiac arrest.
I knew that there was a chance that maybe he wouldn't make it through this, but I just felt that he would be okay, and I hoped he would, and I prayed for him.
We're taking good care of you. Take you to the hospital.
I couldn't squeeze the bag's IV fluids and hold pressure on this man's chest all at the same time.
We have a critical case here. We would like to assist from one of their personnel.
They stopped at a local fire station to pick up an EMT.
He maintained the pressure on the chest while I continued squeezing the bags, the IVs.
It is now 8:07 p.m.
Within 50 minutes, Henry arrived at St. Lawrence Hospital, where he was admitted under the care of Dr. Gaius Clark.
They gave us about almost 20 minutes of advance notice. So we knew from the very beginning that we had a man that was massively injured, a man that was basically bleeding to death.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Is he hurt?
The trauma surgeons were there, anesthesiologist was there, put a tube in his lungs to breathe for him. Cardiopulmonary was there to do electrocardiogram and blood gases. The laboratory was there to draw blood in the man. All these things were done within 20 minutes.
I'm going to have to put a tube down into your chest to help you breathe.
One lung was basically collapsed and filled with blood. The surgical team put a chest tube into the lung. The blood immediately went into the auto transfuser. And before he went even into surgery, he was given 600 cc of his own blood back. So even though the prognosis was considered extremely grave, there was at least the possibility that he would survive.
For 2 weeks, Henry remained in a coma. His wife, Maxine, could only hope and wait.
We went to see him in the critical care unit. Oh, God. I never thought he'd make it. I didn't think he'd survive. No, I didn't.
After 3 weeks, 76-year-old Henry Dumas was doing well enough to be released from the hospital. He continues to slowly recover from a broken clavicle, broken ribs, severed arteries, and a punctured lung.
It's been almost 5 months now.
and I get around pretty good. And I even mow the yard, which I couldn't do for a long time. Yeah, I'll get back like I was. I'm determined to, or try to anyway.
Hi.
Thanks for using locals.org, the nonprofit that makes local over-the-air broadcasting.
Feeling to somebody like that. People like Shannon, I mean, I don't think come along every day.
I think everyone that stopped to help this man deserved tremendous credit, because this man had the type of injury that literally in a matter of minutes would bleed to death. If any link along this entire chain had been broken, this man would have died.
I was really thankful. Even now, I think it's quite a lot. How unlucky and lucky I was. My God.
Next.
I wasn't sure if it was in the house, if it was outside. All I knew was we just had to get downstairs and get the boys out.
We begin on the streets of East Boston, late in 1982. Ever since Ed Escalillo had made the startling discovery that there was a parrot living outside near his home, he had wanted to bring it inside as a family pet.
Hi. How are you?
Elliot.
But he could never manage to catch the bird.
One night, my wife and myself had come home from a Christmas party, and it was the first snowfall that we had that night. And she had gone over and moved the trash barrel, and the parrot was there, and he started screaming. But it was so cold that when he tried to fly, his feet were actually frozen to the ground, and he couldn't move. We brought him into the hospital. The doctor says to me, either one or two things will happen. He'll die of pneumonia, or he'll have severe frostbite, and he'll lose all his toes. And sure enough, as time went on, his toes all started to turn black, and they fell off one at a time. Very rarely did he talk. He sounds more like a pigeon than a parrot.
Now, Rescue 911 on True Crime Network.
You think he started to mimic the pigeons that he was hanging with?
Next, Rescue 911.
We didn't want to clip his wings because when he started losing his toes, he wasn't going to have any way to get around. So we had a spare room, and we let him stay in there. And he used to fly around, and he managed.
On September 23rd, 1983, a major gas leak in East Boston changed everything.
It turned out to be the busiest night in the history of the Boston Fire Department, with well over 460 some odd runs in just a 5-hour period. The situation was caused by the malfunction of the gas regulator. The defective regulator allows that high pressure gas to come right through the regulator and flood it through the whole system in that square mile of gas pipe.
Some sweet dreams to you guys. Good night, Elliot.
Now, if somebody had a house in that area of East Boston that morning, the pilot light, which normally is just about visible, would have shot up as high as 18 inches. In some cases, the gas pressure actually blew the pilot out. Now the house is filled with gas. If you didn't have a pilot light, the gas overtakes the oxygen, and now you're breathing straight gas.
We used to shut his door. For some reason, we didn't shut his door that night, and they usually don't fly at night. I could hear Elliot screaming and flapping and just flying all around us. I could smell the gas, but I was incorporating it all into my dream.
Around 3 a.m., officials began evacuating the homes in the neighborhood.
Evacuate your house with the gas leak. Evacuate your house with the gas leak.
We had 3 major fires, all going at the same time, plus an additional at least 50 small flare-ups of fires.
The Ascalillos were sleeping so deeply, they never heard the police warning. Ed's friend, Billy Kenny, ran over to see if he could help.
It was a battle zone. It was chaos because people didn't know what happened.
fire started and nobody knew why.
In my dream, my brother-in-law was trying to light the stove, and it wouldn't. I was saying, don't you smell the gas? Light a match and get the pilot lit. Everything all happens at once. With Elliot screaming and flapping over us, and that's when Ed woke me up. I was cold. My skin was clammy, and we could smell the gas. I wasn't sure if it was in the house, if it was outside. All I knew was we just had to get downstairs and get the boys out.
Wait, don't turn on the light.
With gas filling their house, any spark from a light or a ringing telephone could set off an explosion.
I could hear it just like a steam pipe.
Ready, hold on, pal.
Ed got Eddie, and I got Michael. They were still asleep. They were groggy. I don't know if they were overcome by the fumes or what, but they did not wake up until I got them outside.
The fire trucks were just arriving on the scene at these houses. Either they'd had an explosion in their house or they'd had a fire. They're on the street. Ones whose houses were on fire were out to save their tail. Ones whose houses were on fire were out to help people whose houses were on fire.
I saw Ed go back into the house, and it upset me to think, why was he going back there? But I just had to get my boys away from the house.
Irene took their kids to Eddie's mother's.
I didn't know what was happening, because I just thought that was it. I thought I'd never have another house again.
Unlike many of their neighbors, the Ascalillos had their windows closed that night. The gas levels in their house were dangerously high.
I was really upset, but I had to get my boys safe. And as soon as they were in my mother-in-law's house, I came right back.
Where's Daddy? I'll get you over, Elliot. All right, everything's okay, pal. Bring him over to my mother's house. I still have to shut the gas. Eddie, get out of the house!
We were greatly concerned that somebody would come in with pent up a building, especially one that had no pilot light, where the gas wasn't being burnt up and used, that somebody would come in and throw a light switch and get some residual gas that would be in the building. And it would have been disastrous.
I was screaming for him to get out. He just wouldn't get out, and I could still hear the gas. So I ran around the corner and I grabbed the fireman.
Ed could not seem to turn off the gas main.
I was always one who thought about having fire extinguishers and smoke alarms in the house. I don't know where I got the strike. I had gone back over to the pipe, and I grabbed a hold of the pipe. I found the gas main, and I shut. And there was no more gas in the house.
Everything's okay.
And it really never dawned on me until afterwards. I says to myself, you know, if this was 20 minutes earlier, or we were not wakened by Elliot, then we'd all been history.
By 11:30 that morning, the incident was over.
I heard about Elliot the parrot afterwards. He saved that family, no question.
Acting Deputy Fire Chief Joe Hooker inspected the damage in the area.
We were so very, very lucky that there were no injuries and no deaths. The big thing, I believe, was the fact that people left their homes and got out on the street. They got out of the building.
7 years have passed, but the Ascalillo family will never forget what Elliot did for them.
If it wasn't for Elliot, I don't think we'd be here. He went on a mission to get us up, and that's just what he did.
Elliot's veterinarian, Marge McMillan, sees a logical explanation for his actions.
When birds are in captivity, they do begin to treat people like other birds, and because of birds' instinct to warn the flock through screaming, I think it may very well have been a way of alerting his family.
In 1988, Elliot became the first bird ever to receive the state's Pet Hero of the Year award.
He loves us, and we love him.
Hi, have you ever heard of Beachbody On Demand? Hold on a sec.
The following programming is EI, educational and informative.
This week on Animal Outtakes,
Snooty actually came here when he was 11 months old in June of 1949.
as the oldest manatee in captivity, Snooty is in the record books. We'll see how he's helping this endangered species make a comeback.
Typically looks great, and now he's a wild animal again.
And the rescued manatee gets a proper send-off back into the wild.
Animal Outtakes is EI, Educational Informative. It's on the Decades Network.
This week, we're visiting
I am going to
Southwest
post more
Florida's
Rescue
most
911
famous residents.
videos.
Snooty, the oldest living manatee in captivity. Today, we get a rare glimpse behind the scenes to see what goes into taking care of this gentle giant, and how Snooty is helping researchers learn more about manatees like him.
You and I were born in the same year. Yes. And you're holding up much better. Yes, you are.
That manatee right there is Snooty. He was born the same year I was, 1948, making him the oldest living manatee. Now, he was born in Miami.
Born in Miami.
In captivity.
In captivity.
How did that happen?
Well, a 1926 Danish warship was raised out of the Miami harbor and turned into a bar, a restaurant, and an aquarium. And the owner of that facility got permission from the state of Florida to go out and capture a manatee that they could house in their aquarium. And laws were very different back then, not as much was known about manatees. They captured a female they named Lady, and then without knowing it, Lady was pregnant, and the next thing they knew, they had not just the one manatee they were permitted to have, but two, and one was the baby.
Marilyn Margold is the South Florida Museum's Director of Living Collections. Now, Snooty spent how many years in Miami before coming up here to Bradenton?
He actually came up here after maybe about 7 or 8 months for a DeSoto celebration, and Manatee County liked the idea of having a baby manatee around, so they made a request that Snooty be transferred here permanently. So Snooty actually came here when he was 11 months old in June of 1949.
So when he got here to the museum, it was a little different aquarium at that time.
A lot different, yeah.
I'm sure a lot different.
At that time, the museum was located where the restaurant Pier 22 is, so they actually had an in-water tank for him, and that's how he started out. Then, as the museum grew and moved to this location in the 60s, they built a bigger tank for him, and then in the early 90s, he is the one you see today.
Snooty's current tank holds 60,000 gallons of water. It's big enough for 3 manatees to live there comfortably. But right now, Snooty is the only resident. More on that later. Snooty is one of just 4 manatees in the state of Florida that have been classified as non-releasable since they were born prior to the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Marilyn says he's played a huge role in helping educate people about manatees.
You know, Marilyn, you have
granted us an honor to be here with Snooty today, and you've allowed me to just kind of pet him a little bit, but we do know that that is really not the way that Snooty should be treated. In the past, many years ago, people did interact with him, but that really didn't work, did it?
You know, it depends on how you look at it. It worked in the sense that people may have gotten a better understanding about manatees at the time. But what we've learned since then has been significantly different. And that we see how imprinted on Snooty is with human beings, and that's not a good thing for manatees out in the wild. It's important that people don't interact with them out in the wild, and that's simply because if they get used to that, they can be involved in boating accidents, other things can happen to them, they can be dependent on a human being for finding water instead of on themselves, so there's lots of reasons why we discourage that.
How much fun has it been to spoil him over the years?
Oh, that's the best part, you know, to be able to do that. And I think one of our favorite parts of it is that we do have an animal that we can interact with. You know, certainly it's a privilege to have the oldest of any given species, you know, under your roof. And so South Florida Museum stepping up to the plate when he was 11 months old, I don't think they had any idea that they were going to be doing the same thing 60 years, 65 years later. But here we are.
Snooty moved into his current freshwater tank in 1993. One thing you'll notice right away is how clear the water is. That's not typical of what you would see in the wild, though. The South Florida Museum monitors the amount of chlorine in the tank under USDA guidelines. There's just enough in the water to disinfect the tank, but not enough to harm the manatees in any way. Snooty isn't the oldest manatee in town. Down the road in Sarasota, Hugh and Buffett are entertaining visitors at Moat Aquarium. In their late 20s, they're still in the prime of life as far as manatees go. Manatees are large, peaceful mammals whose fingernails and wrinkly skin resemble that of their closest relatives, the elephants. Having high IQs and being very curious adds to their uniqueness. They've been at Moat since 1996 and are the two most extensively trained manatees in the world. For more than 15 years, Moat's research has focused on how manatees use their senses to perceive their ever-changing environment. Our Florida manatees are constantly facing threats, like getting caught up in old fishing lines and other debris, or being hit by boats. A loss of the warm waters that they need to live in can lead to cold stress in the winters, and that can be deadly. In one of the newest studies, Moat scientists have found the manatees can feel water movement thousands of times smaller than the width of a human hair. That makes them one of the most touch-sensitive mammals on Earth. Oh yes, and by the way, remember when we spoke about their IQs? Well, Hugh and Buffett have been known to predict the Super Bowl winners. In fact, the two manatees have been making their selections since 2008. Buffett has picked the winner of the big games 7 times, while Hugh has been right 5 times. Still ahead on Animal Outtakes, our visit with Snooty continues as we learn what it takes to keep an 1,100-pound manatee happy and healthy.
What's this? It looks like a toy. What's the worry? This toy has a motor. It goes in a hurry. The house looks like we found a whole new way to end up in the emergency room. Cars and signs and bikes and pedestrians. Better take it down a notch, scooter equestrians.
Morning when you wake up to putting them to bed at night and every moment in between, it really is so special, and boy, is it exhausting. One thing that I fear about being a parent is the future for my children, because I think a parent
Each other, then when it's time, the wild manatees move on, and Snooty gets his tank back to himself.
Okay, breakfast time, pal.
When it comes to taking care of Snooty, there's a lot to be done on a daily basis. but most of it has to do with his food. Manatees can eat 10 to 15% of their body weight in food each day, and Snooty is no exception. Weighing in at nearly 1,100 pounds, Director of Living Collections, Marilyn Margold, said this big guy is an eating machine.
Right now, what Snooty eats is approximately 70 pounds of lettuce, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, depending on the amount of kale, and then another 10 to 20 pounds of other types of vegetables. We use the sweet potatoes and carrots only as conditioning foods. They're not a large part of his diet. He gets about a pound of each. That's just so that he does what we ask him to do when we want him to do it. Yeah. And that doesn't always work. There are times of the year when he may eat less than other times, depending on the water temperature. So this just gives us an idea of where he's at with his feeding behavior.
Is he a fussy eater?
Not fussy in the sense of I don't want to eat today, but he might be fussy at any given time and say, I don't want broccoli at this moment, I want cabbage, I don't want cabbage, I want lettuce. Okay.
But they always know how much he's eating.
If you know Sally's writing things down, that's because we put everything into the computer. Part of USDA regulations, because they're the ones that monitor marine mammal care, is that we're required to keep everything and keep records of everything that we do.
After preparing the food, it's hoisted upstairs to the edge of the tank. And before he gets his first bite of lettuce, there's more work to be done with Snooty.
Now, is that like a treat for him, the apple?
At one point in time, there we go. You'll notice that there's some holes on one side of his body. Those are scars from some abscesses some years ago. So he was really taught to roll over for medical management.
Sure.
And that's part of what we do in the morning. That gives us the opportunity to check him all the way around. Also, if he refuses his apple, that can let us know if he's cutting a new tooth. So we get a lot of information just by spending that little bit of time interacting with him.
He definitely wants that apple.
Now, one of the things we try to do is restrict this back area to human interaction, training, exams, and get him to do his feeding at the feeding station so that way he's always there when we want him out for presentations, which works about 90% of the time.
As we made our way out to the front of the tank, Snooty was eager to meet us and start munching on his breakfast. We watched as manatee care staffer Sally hand-fed Snooty, a daily routine that starts early in the morning and runs throughout the day.
Well, we'll feed him in the morning, usually for about an hour or two, just to get as much food in him as we can, and that gives us a really good time to observe his feeding behaviors. And then we feed him at each one of the presentations throughout the day, which is there's 4 public presentations and at least 2 school presentations. So he's fed another 6 times, but the bulk of the food is in the morning.
So he's dining for about 2 hours.
And he'll change his mind as time goes on. He'll get tired of lettuce and then say, oh, I'm ready for the kale, and work his way down his food chain up there.
Next on Animal Outtakes,
this is graduation day for him, and I think he'll do really great.
Right along as a rescued manatee officially becomes a wild manatee again.
It doesn't matter how you say it. Away.
Out their lives on the 50-acre property, while others will be rehomed to new, loving families.
Over the years, each and every one of you have indulged me by listening to my dreams. And today, your patience and understanding has paid off. Look around.
Construction on Dante's Den has been going quickly since then. We caught up with builder Mike Carter 6 weeks later.
Well, Marcia,
Yeah.
everything's progressing along nicely.
It sure is. We have buildings.
We have the hospital up, and you can see they're getting ready to pour what we call rake beams on top. And then they'll be ready to set the roof trusses, which are setting right over here. So we're headed towards getting the roof on and getting it dried in.
This is exciting. What building is this going to be right here?
That's the adoption center, and it will house house the short-term animals prior to being adopted. And there is a variety of space, and each area has access to exterior porches and screened areas for exercise, lots of light in the interior of the building.
That was one thing, when we walked through, that we so noticed that there's so much light. It makes it happy.
Absolutely.
And of course, we're looking for stressless, so there's no cages.
That's right. One of the most newest trends in the industry is no more chain link, no more enclosures, no more of that compound feel. It's all glass walls, very open, very bright, very calming for the animals and very inviting for the guests as well.
There will be a state-of-the-art hospital on site, which will provide around-the-clock care to those that need it. But the dens themselves may be the most intriguing aspect of the project. This, Mike, is the exciting part of Dante's Den.
I know it's your favorite.
Yes, it certainly is. Tell us about this one.
Well, this is the first of 5 den buildings. It's capable of housing up to 18 dogs at a time, each with its own individual room. This is where long-term animals will be taken care of. Great finishes, some cypress tongue and groove ceilings, a very homey atmosphere. Each dog's den is designed to replicate their home environment as closely as possible.
Amenities include air conditioning and private screened-in porches for the dogs, as well as television sets inside their rooms and a playground and pool outside. When the residents come here to live, this is when their owners can no longer take care of them for whatever reasons, or when you think that your dog just may outlive you. Dante's Den is now the answer for so many of us that really don't have anybody to give our dogs to. Dante's Den will care for your dog the way you would if you could. Over the next few months, we will continue to bring you construction updates from Dante's Den and stories of the new residents once they move into their new homes next spring. The property is fantastic, and the next time you're here, the dogs will be here. So we know, Marilyn, of course, that Snooty has been in captivity all of his life. But from time to time, you bring some in from the wild.
South Florida Museum is part of the Manatee Rehabilitation Partnership, and we're what's called a second stage facility, so we're not an acute care hospital. They will go to one of those hospitals initially when they are rescued.
While the rescued manatees share Snooty's tank, they don't get the VIP treatment of the museum's most famous resident.
Because Snooty was captive born prior to the Marine Mammal Protection Act, we handle him very differently than we do the wild manatees. We don't want the wild manatees to have that human imprint that Snooty has. We want them to go out and be manatees and know how to adapt to the wild again. So we don't hand feed them, we don't interact with them, we don't give them special attention. If they try to mimic Snooty, they're not rewarded for that behavior. They are given what are called environmental enrichment devices to feed from rather than being hand-fed. Those devices are intended to either sink quickly to the bottom, so they have to learn to bottom feed. Some hang vertical in the tank, so they have to use their fins and push the food towards their mouth. But it's all ways for them to mimic behavior that they're going to need when they're released, unlike Snooty, who's not going anywhere.
Now, you just released some manatees that you had here back in January. Why were they here to begin with?
Those 2 animals were Chino and Longo, and both of them happened to be pulled in because of cold stress.
Cold stress is pretty apparent. You may have seen it. It's just the white dermatitis that you can see on their skin. It usually shows up near the face, around the nose, and around the base of the flippers.
Melanie Fisher is a biologist with the Sea to Shore Alliance. She is one of the people responsible for tracking the rescued manatees once they're ready to go back into the wild. On this afternoon, she's ready to graduate a manatee from the program.
Went on with this guy, Tippy Canoe. He's a young male adult. He was rescued in Charlotte Harbor in 2010 in the winter because he was an orphan, also suffering from cold stress.
Tippy Canoe was still a calf then, weighing just 300 pounds. A few months after his release in February of 2012, he lost his GPS tag, and Sea to Shore lost their ability to track him. Luckily, in 2013, Tippy Canoe was spotted right here in Sarasota.
We were lucky enough to get a report from Moat that he had shown up in one of their photo ID groups of animals here in Pansy Bayou. So we were really lucky. I raced down here and was able to go out in a boat and swim up to him and pin the tag on his belt again.
Melody checked out Tippy Canoe last month and he looked great. So he's ready to become a wild manatee again.
It should get louder and louder as we approach him.
It wasn't long before we spotted Tippy Canoe in Pansy Bayou. We laid anchor a good distance away, and Melody swam out with a special tool designed to help take off the belt and track her.
Well, we found Tippy Canoe, and he was feeding with a group of, I would say, at least 8 to 10 from what I saw out there. And I tried a quiet approach, but he caught on to me once I hooked the tool to his belt. But we did eventually end up removing the belt. Tippy Canoe looked great, and now he's a wild animal again. Yes, and I'm really happy for him. This is graduation day for him, and I think he'll do really great.
How gratifying is this to you to work with manatees?
It's really a privilege. It's an inspiring thing that lots of people can do with their spare time, and it's something I get to do every day.
That's what we're here to do, is to see them succeed. So it's like the children growing up and getting a fabulous job, or going to college. It's the same thing with them.
Manatees can live in both salt and seawater. They're usually found in the warm, brackish waters at the mouths of rivers and estuaries and in bays. They surface every 3 to 5 minutes for air, but can stay underwater for up to 20 minutes. Manatees are extremely buoyant, a trait attributed to the location of their diaphragm and breathing. They're also not very fast, topping out at an average speed of 5 miles per hour.
Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. You can always find people who are helping. Thank you to all the first responders who put their lives in danger to help us, when my brothers and sisters and mom and dad and grandpa and grandma need them. We look out for the helpers because they look out for us.
Thank you, first responders. There's a rewarding feeling you get when you do like, hey man, I just, we carried a lady out of fire,
This is what I signed up for as a first responder, and this is what I love to do. And I'm going to continue going to work day in and day out and providing help to those that need it.
Thank you, first responders.
Thank you, first responders. We need you. We wanted to let you know how much we appreciate you.
Be safe, look after yourself, and look after one another. Thanks.
This is a nursery, a home, a soft place to land. This is a superhighway, a Sunday morning. This is quality time and a family tradition. Wetlands keep flood waters at bay, improve water quality, and serve as rest stops for the continental journey migrating birds make each year. This is where you play. So this is where we work.
Hey, Lolo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out?
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad,
episode of Animal Outtakes. We hope you've enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to keep our pal Snooty happy and healthy. Plus, how he's playing a role in getting injured manatees back to the wild, where they belong. Join us next week for another outstanding animal adventure. We'll see you then.
The following programming is EI, educational and informative.
Today on Animal Outtakes, what are the different types of animals that you are preparing menus here for?
Everything from aardvarks to zebras.
We're taking a lunch break with the residents at Busch Gardens. How the animal care staff makes sure each and every one of these animals are well fed and happy. Stay tuned to see. What goes into
The following programming is EI, educational and informative.
Today on Animal Outtakes, what are the different types of animals that you are preparing menus here for?
Everything from aardvarks to zebras.
We're taking a lunch break with the residents at Busch Gardens. How the animal care staff makes sure each and every one of these animals are well fed and happy. Stay tuned to see what goes into preparing lunch for you.
This is EI Educational Informative. Animal Outtakes is on the Decades Network. Animal Outtakes, amazing tales from the animal world.
Hello and welcome
With
back to
Marsha
Animal Outtakes.
Panoose.
Today, we're at Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida, learning all about animal nutrition. The park is home to more than 12,000 animals, from birds and reptiles to giraffes and elephants. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of work to keep these animals well fed and healthy on a daily basis. Join us as we go from prep to palate at Busch Gardens.
Visitors at Busch Gardens Tampa may come for the rides, or perhaps the entertainment. The animals you find in between are just as thrilling. Thousands of animals call Busch Gardens home, and all of them have to eat.
We also have frozen anoles.
Nutritionist Heidi Bissell is tasked with making sure those meals are top-notch.
Heidi, we're in your kitchen.
Welcome.
And this kitchen is going to feed about 3,000 animals, you've told me.
Every day.
Every day. So that's quite a menu, I would say.
It is.
Those diets are mapped out on menu cards, and the diets vary from day to day.
We serve, all of our food comes right off the same truck that serves our human food, so it's top grade, human quality. We don't do any seconds or anything. Every animal has an individual diet that every item is weighed out, and it might vary from day to day. So different animals will get different things, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so that they have that variety and interest in their diet.
Well, this is the mongoose lemur.
Yes.
So they're gonna get banana, honeydew, grape, papaya, mango, cantaloupe.
Almost.
Not so bad.
But today's Tuesday, so they're only gonna get some of those things on Tuesday. They'll get different things on different days of the week.
How long does this take to prepare for 3,000 animals?
Well, we usually have 4 or 5 people here every day. They come in at 6 a.m. and they work all day chopping and preparing all the different foods that we feed our animals.
The Busch Gardens chefs follow the directions on the menu cards, measuring and weighing out the food for each individual animal.
So she's got lettuce here. She's got a salad here of chopped greens. So she's making a diet right now for a pheasant.
Do you make this yourself?
We make this ourselves every day, fresh. It gets chopped and then divided out into all the diets of the animals that eat that. So what Kathleen's doing right now is she's putting all the different diet ingredients into a bag. So here's that pheasant diet that she just made. And you'll see it has a pelleted mix, like a grain mix for chickens and poultry, stuff like that. And then there's some chopped vegetables here, some frozen mix, some peas and carrots and corn. Also some chopped greens and some worms, because we know how much pheasants like worms. They're alive. They're alive and we live. We like them alive. Shows they're healthy. Yep.
I'll be. We were doing good until we got to the worms.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot more worms today.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so this is packaged then.
This is packaged.
So this is for one.
This is for one pheasant, yes.
One pheasant. Does he get fed or she get fed once a day or twice a day?
So what happens is that we send it out, we put it in a bucket, and that bucket goes out to that area, and then the zookeepers in that area will choose how to feed it out. So they may give this all at once, or they may do several meals throughout the day. That's up to them. We send a whole day's worth of food at a time.
That full day's meal includes a few tasty treats as well.
We try and make sure that the diet includes everything that they need for treats and training and all those different kinds of enrichment foods. So we try and provide all of that. So in this case, I am going to say that the pheasant's favorite food is probably these worms and maybe these corn kernels. So the keepers might use that for some sort of training or to call them over, things like that.
In order to house all the fruits, vegetables, and other tasty morsels for these animals, these zoo chefs need a pretty large storage space, the cooler.
So welcome to our cooler.
Yes. Oh, Heidi, this is a treasure trove.
Isn't it?
Is it?
It's cold. And this is just the refrigerator. We're going to go into the freezer next, and it's really cold in there. So all of these walls here is all of the food you just saw Kathleen using to prepare diets. So we've got vegetables and fruits.
Now these deliveries come in the morning, early in the morning. How many deliveries do you get in a week?
We do deliveries twice a week. We inspect everything as it comes in to make sure it's the top quality and there's no spots on it or anything. We want our animals to have the best food possible, so we make sure that it comes in and it's safe and ready to eat.
There are more than 12,000 birds, mammals, reptiles, and other creatures and critters representing 300 species they call Busch Gardens home. Every year, these animals consume 1.4 million pounds of food. That averages out to about 4,000 pounds every single day. And the Busch Gardens nutrition team modifies more than half of those diets every month to make sure that each and every individual animal is getting the nutrition he or she needs. Still ahead on Animal Outtakes. So who is the first one that we're going to make dinner for? We're heading into the kitchen to find out how the zoo chefs at Busch Gardens tailor diets to each individual animal.
Now, at the end of the day, the nutrition
like that. We are 13,000 strong, and we won't stop until the rights of every child are protected. Will you help us? UNICEF for every child.
With more than 12,000 animals calling the park home,
Busch Gardens in Tampa has quite a job in making sure each animal gets the proper food and nutrients to stay healthy. That's where their nutrition kitchen comes in. Let's take a look behind the scenes.
Here at the Animal Care Center kitchen, park visitors get to learn about what goes into each and every meal for the resident animals at Busch Gardens. Heidi Bissell is a zoo nutritionist and is one of only about 20 people in the world who specialize in the daily diets of animals. She carefully plans out the meals to make sure each animal is getting the right nutrients to stay healthy. But like people, not all animals like the same foods.
So we're going to make two sloth diets today. One is Mario and one is Harry. And Mario likes different things, so he's going to have different things in his diet. Now, at the end of the day, the nutrient composition of these are going to be very similar, but we got there by two different ways. So there's two different sets of ingredients that we're going to put into there.
Mario, the sloth, is going to get leaf eater something.
Yep, leaf eater biscuits, that's
Okay, and he's going to get romaine lettuce and spring lettuce, green beans, and a hard-boiled egg.
Yep, half of a hard-boiled egg.
And a combination of cucumber, pear, mango, and carrot. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do it.
Sloths are herbivores. They eat plants, and they actually, like many other herbivores, they use bacteria to help digest those plants. So they have a stomach that's really big, and it houses bacteria. These are good bacteria. And they hold on to the leafy green things that they eat, typically leaves, and they ferment that. And that fermentation makes fatty acids, all sorts of different vitamins, different things that these guys depend on to stay alive. These leaf eater biscuits are a high fiber biscuit that mimics the nutrient composition of leaves. The other thing with sloths is they like to hold their food and eat it, kind of like a kid with an ice cream cone. So we like to cut their food in long strips so that they can have like sticks to hold on to. So some of these things, like the green beans, they already come in that form. We don't have to do anything to the green
That's an
beans.
easy one.
And the leaves are fine, just as the leaves. This is spring mix. And the biscuits are already kind of like that. But the mango, if you would like to put on a cutting glove and chop that into strips, and pear and cucumber.
You want pear in strips too?
Yep, just long.
So we want. Let's go.
You
Is
can
that
do
too thin?
You can do a little fatter so that, yeah, just like that.
Okay.
Perfect. I think you'll like that.
So we aim to please here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can do the same for the
Same thing
cucumber.
for cubes?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, so what do we do next?
Yeah, so let's just put everything in the bowl.
Just throw it in?
Yep, you can just throw it in. Here, I'm gonna throw in some of these things. So we've got Mario's diet ready.
Okay.
And now we're ready for Harry.
So today, Harry is going to have the gluten-free diet. He's going to have green beans, fresh spinach, romaine lettuce, zucchini, carrot, and papaya.
There we go.
All right.
So this is actually, feel this, it's like a Jell-O. So, it's a soft diet, and it's a gel diet.
Okay.
So the joy of that is, unlike these biscuits from Mario's diet, we can't really change these. These are like your cat or your dog food, or even a breakfast cereal. Like, they're in the flavor that they're in, and they're in the shape that they're in. With these gel diets, we can mix in other flavors, or we can make them different amounts with different amounts of water. So for Harry, we've got a little bit of chopping to do. The green beans, again, now you can see Harry really likes his green beans. We got a lot of green beans in Harry's diet.
So after some more chopping, our second sloth meal is just about ready to go.
Putting that in there. And then the lettuce he'll actually eat whole. So, he can just hold.
Thanks for using Locast.org, the nonprofit that makes local, over-the-air broadcast available to everyone. Just $5 each month covers the cost of delivering your local broadcast channels. Please help Locast by becoming a member today.
Hold that in his hand and eat that. So we can just put that in there.
And what about this?
Oh, you can add that in too.
Okay.
Okay.
So Heidi, we've talked a lot about the ingredients and the right portions. Why is this so important? I mean, these are wild animals. Why is it important?
Well, it's important because it all has to to work together to balance the nutrients that they need. So the diet has to include all the different things that we use for training and enrichment. When it's balanced, that it has the right amount of protein, the right amount of carbohydrates, everything that they need will be in there, and that'll help keep them happy and healthy as long as possible.
And these are some of the ingredients that we don't normally see.
No. These are a little different than you might find in a human kitchen. So these worms, they're actually fed a special diet. Worms don't have bones, so they don't have a lot of calcium. And when we feed worms to some of our animals, they might become calcium deficient. So what we actually do is we feed these worms a high calcium diet, and that stays in their bellies. And then when the birds eat the worms, they'll get all the calcium in there, and so that'll make them a more complete diet for them.
So you're really helping nature.
Yeah.
After the break, we're back in the kitchen at Busch Gardens where we see why the staff is actually encouraging these animals to play with their food.
The world is talking about coronavirus, but it's hard to know what to listen to. We have answers to your questions, like who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65. People with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes. People undergoing cancer treatment. And people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov. Together, we can help stop the spread.
Dear humans, this is an adoption campaign, but it's not for me, or Mr. Buttons, or Frank over there. It's for you, humans. This is a call to humans to adopt our movement, to adopt our moment.
Hey, dog food? They're moving, they're alive and wiggly. They're the best kind.
But before we begin to assemble this variety of food, there's one more thing on the table that Heidi points out.
And we're also going to make it interesting for him, because he's a smart animal, so we want to make it sort of fun for him. But if you've ever seen armadillos in the wild, they snuffle around in the leaves and forage for things. So we're going to set this up so that he can do that here. So we're going to give him leaves, and we're going to hide his food in the leaves.
Okay.
And then we're going to bring him out and let him...
Now you prepare this on this dish.
Yes.
But in actuality, what are you going to do? Just throw it out?
He's got a big exhibit, and so we might hide it in different things. There's hay in there, and we can stash it around, or we might do something like leaves.
The idea of hiding Oli's food is known as environmental enrichment. It's a way to help stimulate behavior specific to their own species. It's up to the zookeepers to come up with innovative ways to hide the next meal, so the animals will have to be creative when they're hungry and ready to eat.
So would you like to make Oli's diet for him?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I will leave this to your creative discretion. So anything that you want to do to make it fun for Oli, go right ahead.
Well, I think we should start, of course, with the leaves and spread those around. Now, the kiwi, you don't have much in the kiwi, do you?
Not much.
So we'll just kind of
He's
put
also
one-
a very small animal.
Yeah, okay, well, then he just gets a little taster of it. Now this should be very good for him, his vegetables.
Yep. Gotta get all your veggies in there.
Yep. It's getting to look quite pretty, actually.
Yeah.
After adding the insectivore diet and the mixed fruit, it's time to add in perhaps Oli's favorite part of the meal, worms.
That's great.
And he really has to have those, huh?
He really does have to have
Well,
those.
then, let's dig in.
You're doing a great job of that.
All right. So, in they go. One got away.
Oh, yeah. Make sure he gets them all.
Okay, so now though, I have things kind of spread around for him.
Yeah.
Okay, is
And
he
you know how-
going to like my arrangement?
I think he is. You know how armadillos like to dig around in leaf
Yeah,
litter
they're
and
diggers.
find food, so I think this will be perfect for him. If you want to add more leaves, you can make it a little more of a challenge, or we can go with that.
With his meal on the table, it's time to bring out the guest of honor.
We
He's
are
our dinner guest.
we are ready for Oli.
Oh, here he is. Sweetheart. Yes? No? He's gonna go right into the food.
There he is.
Okay.
So let's see what he eats first. First thing was a waxworm. Second thing was a waxworm. You can tell what his favorite food is.
As Oli munched away on his dinner, we found out a little more about our little armored friend.
And actually, three-banded armadillos are really cool because they actually can roll completely up into a perfect circle, just about, like their head tucks in. When he's finished eating, maybe he can demonstrate that. But, you know, they tuck so completely in that they are very protected.
Now, he's a very neat eater.
He is.
He's a quiet eater. Are there any teeth involved in that?
He doesn't have much in the way of front teeth. He does have a few in the back for chewing up his food.
And what is the basic role that an armadillo plays in our ecosystem?
So they're actually called detritivores or omnivores. They sort of eat a little bit of everything that's out there in the leaf litter, and they'll stir things up, and they kind of take care of eating a lot of the things that are around on the forest floor.
Animal care specialist Trevor Sewage says, Oli's nose does most of the work when it comes to scavenging for dinner.
Smelling? Does he have a keen sense of smell?
He does, he absolutely does. You can see his little nose moving a mile a minute. I'll turn around so you guys can see him again real fast. That nose is almost sort of like a pig's nose, very good for helping him to root around. As you all were talking about earlier, helping to kind of root underneath the leaves. That nose gives him a phenomenal way to track down all sorts of insects and any other little snacks that he might be looking for as well, too.
What would you say his strongest sense is? Because those ears are not exactly small.
You know,
So he's hearing quite well.
Probably a combination of his smell as well as his sense of hearing. Doesn't really rely upon his eyesight all that much.
Meanwhile, Oli has found the last of the worms, but refuses to give up on getting just one more of those tasty treats.
There's no more worms in there, buddy. I know you think there are.
I wonder if that was the bowl that had the worms in it.
Probably was.
He's looking after it.
Yup. We'll screw over here if you want. That way we might be able to see that tongue a little bit better. There we go. Come here, buddy. I'm gonna reach across and bring you back on over. There we go.
Well, he certainly has a personality, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. He really loves his food too, and sometimes after he eats, he'll just end up stretching out and falling asleep in his food. So he's a little too spoiled at Busch Gardens. He knows he doesn't have to worry about any predators or anything like that at all. So rather than curl up to sleep like they normally do for protection, oftentimes he'll just stretch himself out and then relax on his plate. All right, buddy. I'll let him head on back home
we did
now.
real well with you. It's good to see you, Ali. Hope you had a good dinner.
I think he did.
Okay.
Definitely enjoyed your cooking.
Right.
Thank you so much for making that food.
My pleasure. The worms were my delicacy. Yes. We'll be right back with more animal outtakes from Busch Gardens.
What's this? It looks like a toy. What's the worry? This toy,
And I'm going to continue going to work day in and day out and providing help to those that need it.
Join us again next week for another outstanding animal adventure. See you then. I was better with a giraffe.
And these are super worms.
We'll be right back with more animal outtakes from Busch Gardens. What? Sorry. I'm having fun here.
Thanks for using Locast. We're a nonprofit and need your help to keep operating. Especially now, during the coronavirus crisis, Americans need access to local broadcast stations. Please contribute $5 a month. Thank you.
First responders jump into action. Rescue 911 next.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened.
When a call for help comes into the police, the information it contains is not always complete. The officers who respond may not be told exactly where the victim is or what they'll find when they finally reach him. This story is not a recreation. It's a tragic reality of patrolling the streets on the night beat in Oakland, California.
Around 1:30 a.m. on Saturday, taxi dispatcher Diane Jackson has 8 cabs on the street working the graveyard shift.
257? 257? My cab driver, 257. About 1:31, I had dispatched him. The next thing I know, he was calling up. And boom, it stopped. You know, like he was in a tussle or they took the mic from him or something. So I went right to the phone because I knew what I was supposed to do.
Police District. Hi, this is Associated Cab Jackson, number 4. My cab 257, he just came on the air, he called me, he told me he's being robbed. Cab number 254? 257. 257. He's not answering. He's not answering. I don't know what they're doing until he just said that. I'm being robbed, and I hit him in the head or something. Did it sound like there was a struggle? A little, yeah. Okay, and did he say the location he was at, or this was just the last place where he was lived at? That's where he picked up at. What color are your cabs? Blue and white. Yeah, we have units on the way, okay? All right, thank you.
When we continue,
You got subject here.
We all have in our mind's eye what's going on with this guy, and we're all kind of frustrated because we don't know where he is.
This is Megan Davies, Beach Ball.
Pushing a loaded grocery cart through a parking lot may increase your chances of being accosted. Some stores offer assistance to your car. Always take advantage of that service. If not offered, ask for an escort. Make sure you're fully prepared to unlock your car. Trying to locate your keys once in a parking lot is a bad idea. When unloading your cart, keep alert to your surroundings so you're aware of anyone approaching and can respond accordingly. Be aware and be safe.
Alright, showing units in the area, District 5, Associated Cab number 257, blue and white cab. The driver just yelled over the air, he was being 211, unable to raise him at this point. During a natural
1 month earlier, an Oakland cab driver was shot to death after being robbed at gunpoint. Sergeant Bob Crawford and all the officers on patrol on this night remember.
We all have in our mind's eye what's going on with this guy, and we're all kind of frustrated because we don't know where he is. They begin to look in places that they're familiar with on their beats, where a cab might go, or where someone may force a cab to go. You know, a dark alley, a parking lot. When somebody calls over a microphone and screams, "I'm in trouble," I think that many police officers relate to that. 2 out of 76. The only thing that that person has is that microphone. That's their connection with the outside world.
Finally, he answered me, and I said, 257. I said, where are you?
257, I got to get some help to you. You got to tell me where you are. 257. You don't know where you are? I don't know. Okay, 257. Just be calm. 257, are you hurt? 257. Can you tell me you just got robbed?
And after he said that, I said, either he's hallucinating or somebody in the camp playing games and he's really hurt.
They searched for more than 10 minutes without any sign of Cat 257. At 2 a.m., a call comes in.
Oakland Emergency 25. Yes, this is I'm calling from 402 Drive. And it's a cab that's almost in my house. There's some stuff that I don't know what it is. I ain't been outside here. So you send somebody to So you said there's a cab? Yeah, a cab car. And it almost ran into your house? Yes, it did. Okay, but it didn't hit anything, right? I don't know. I get outside. Okay, when you heard how many gunshots? How many gunshots did you hear? I don't know how many. I was asleep. Okay, you heard several. So and this guy in the cab, does he appear to be? I can't see him. All right, we're on the way.
We immediately jumped to the conclusion that the gunshots were related to the missing cab. Oh, that's it. Yeah, there it is. Okay.
This is Oakland Docu Running CUSA, Mobile Crisis Intervention Team. Runner suffers cardiac arrest.
Raymond Backman is one of the first officers on the scene.
It's okay. The evidence is coming, okay? It's coming, okay? What's the name on there? What's your friend still on the live it? Yeah, I see it. Okay, please. Okay, sir. It's the police. Police, okay? Just be calm. Just be calm. Let go of the door, sir, okay? Let go of the door. Let go of the door. The police are here, okay?
I guess he thought I was still the person who had tried to rob him because he reached over with his right hand and tried to hold the door shut as I was opening it.
Stay still, okay?
It appeared that this had been very recent, that we rolled up within minutes of the actual shooting. So I was concerned initially that the suspect could still be in the area.
For some reason. Just move the microphone, move the microphone. Just take it easy, just calm down. And he kept moving for the microphone because that was his lifeline. And although he was breathing very shallow, he still was breathing. I looked at his wounds and they looked horrible. The next thing was to help him in his effort to fight back. I think that's critical when you're wounded like that, and to not just to do like in the movies and keel over dead, that you've got to fight for your life. Okay.
Officers searched the scene for any clues.
This kid fire alarm here?
Yeah, they're coming.
8 minutes after the cab was found, rescue workers arrived to treat the driver. Among those who respond is paramedic Christine Lyons-Ross.
The injury that I noticed was a bullet wound to the left temporal. His eye was hanging out. His other eye was shut. He had blood all over him. He was bleeding into his sinuses, which was running out of his nose and into his ears. He was wounded severely. Most people that sustain that severe of an injury are basically dead, actually.
42-year-old Shahid Karon is taken to Highland Hospital and put under the care of Dr. Michael Smith.
He had multiple fragments of the bullet spread out all over his front part of his head. And so that obviously caused a great deal of tissue destruction. Fortunately, most of it was anterior in front of the brain, and the brain really didn't sustain too much injury, which is why he's still with us.
2 months later, Shahid Cologne continues to recover from his serious injury. He is blind as a result of the shooting, but they hope he may regain partial sight in his right eye.
I would have been dead. It is only my quick evacuation to the hospital which has saved me. I wish I could find words to explain my thankfulness, gratefulness to all the people.
Concerned about Shahid's condition, paramedic Christine Lyons-Ross comes to visit him at his home.
I try to think of the patient as my family. You know, I'm someone's mom for 30 minutes or an hour, or I'm someone's sister, or I'm someone's best friend.
I'm just happy you look so good.
And I'm no hero. I just do my job and I love what I do.
At the time of the shooting, Shahid had been a cab driver for only 3 weeks. He started driving taxis at night as a second job to earn money to send his daughter to college.
My whole family was depending on me.
Taxi drivers in Oakland had been campaigning for bulletproof screens between themselves and their passengers. Shortly after the shooting of Shahid Cologne, the city council passed an ordinance making them mandatory.
It's dangerous, especially at night, because you got sick people out there. You got sick people who are on drugs and everything else. Yes, indeed, they need protection.
I mean, this guy here is, you know, just a working Joe. He's out there trying to earn his living like the rest of us, and he didn't ask for that. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's the real tragic part about it.
The same night of the shooting, police arrested a 17-year-old youth for the attempted robbery and attempted murder of Shahid Cologne. He escaped on June 25th and is still at large. Next.
I see there, I says, oh my God, it's dead, and I'm responsible for his death.
Every summer, a group of athletes aged 55 and older gather in the small town of Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, to compete in the state senior games. Some of the footage in this story was taped as events unfolded on the morning of August 9th, 1990.
Dr. Michael Corris was the medical director of the games.
The day of the race was very, very warm. The humidity was high, and that makes for an extremely difficult time, even with young athletes.
7 runners in the 70 to 74-year-old age range were competing for 3 places to go to the Nationals in the 1,500-meter race.
Hey, it's my dad.
70-year-old Edward Johnson had been running for 12 years, but he was competing in the senior games for the first time at the suggestion of his good friend.
Now Rescue 911 on True Crime Network.
90-year-olds race a 100-yard dash, and it's really terrific. I wish I could do that.
Next, Dr. G Medical Exam.
For Ed, running was more than just a sport. It was also a way to stay healthy and strong enough to look after his wife, Wilma, who suffers from multiple sclerosis.
Lately, I have had concern about him racing, but I can't say no to him because he needs the outside interest to keep him going, rather than have to worry about taking care of me all the time.
The director of the games was Faye Connect.
There was nothing that would have warned you of anything. He had no ongoing medical problems. He had competed in triathlons and stuff like that before.
Medical volunteers watched from the sidelines, including EMT Rosie Sherman.
Mr. Johnson, I think, was a very competitive person, and he was trying to give the race his all, and he did.
The winner completed the 1,500-meter race in just under 7 minutes. Ed was close behind.
He had placed third. He had qualified for nationals.
Mobile crisis intervention. Teen runner suffers cardiac
When I
arrest.
got there,
See?
he was still breathing.
The guy in the
Then
yellow
he had
shorts
breathing. The last few breaths that
is
will occur
down
before
on the
someone
track.
ceases to breathe entirely.
I don't think I've ever put this episode on YouTube before, and I don't think I've ever seen this episode. Never saw it on Get TV.
Volunteer EMT Alma Myers rushed to assist.
Dr. Cordes was taking the karate pulse, and at that time he said there was no breathing and no pulse, that we had a cardiac arrest.
Something happened up here. We called for medics. When they turned Ed over, I started to cry. I seen Ed, I says, oh my God, it's Ed, and I'm responsible for his death because I had asked him to come on up to Shippensburg to race. What am I going to say to his wife back home?
His face was very ashen. His mouth was open. His eyes were open. His pupils were fixed. I would say probably the chance of recovery for Mr. Johnson was in the category of maybe 70-30 against.
Was it his last time around?
I've been on a lot of cardiac arrest patients, and in the 10 years, I know that I've only saved really one person, and that was 5 years ago. So, I'm there and I'm thinking, the chances are very slim.
They were pushing on his chest and blowing into his mouth, and I could hear somebody say he was dead. It just took everything out of me.
Periodically, what you do is you go over and you check to see if you feel a pulse in the neck.
When Dr. Cordes told us that he had a pulse, that he was breathing, I was overjoyed, and really overjoyed when Mr. Johnson looked up and said, well, what was my time? That's all he was worried about, was his time.
Mr. Johnson was and is an extremely lucky individual. He did not have a major heart attack that precipitated the cardiac arrest. He had nothing happen to him other than the fact that he died, and other than the fact that he came back. So he is an extremely lucky man.
Ed Johnson's heart stopped beating for more than 4 minutes. He was released from the hospital the next day. 1 year later, Ed shows no signs of any problems. His daughter Susan is still amazed by his recovery.
It looks like they're having a picnic because they're putting out a tablecloth with watermelons on it.
That's the moment when I knew everything was going to be fine.
He has to keep active. And he
I
has
have
to keep
these
in mind
Rescue
that for the
911s
simple reason that
on
his
my DVR
older
with
sisters
streaming them.
both have Alzheimer's, and he's worried about getting.
Oh, because his wife has MS, she's in a wheelchair, multiple sclerosis.
Feel like a normal man trying to get out of the sitting position, but that is nothing related to running. As soon as you get out there, you do your stretching exercises, you're ready to run. The body's ready to run. It'll do it.
Recently, Ed got a chance to thank the EMTs who helped to save his life.
No different than what you saw me last.
Just a little. Hi there.
Thank God that the rescue team was nearby. They did their thing one step at a time, and they brought Ed to within minutes. And I thank them for that, believe me.
All the company members from CB Host Company Shippensburg to you. So that you always remember.
Understand, I lost a 6-year-old with cancer, and I understand.
Yeah, I lost a husband, that's why I came here.
Undoubtedly, they made the future races possible. I thank them because this is my way of life. I do want to continue the way of life that I have. I'm very happy now.
Ed competed
Now
in the
he's
National
riding
Senior
a
Triathlon
bike.
and placed 6th for his age group.
I was advising him not to race anymore last year. But the attitude that he has, go get it, Ed. Go for the gold, that's what I call it. Go for it.
Maybe his wife isn't always in a wheelchair. Or maybe that was his daughter standing.
I love my kids. I love my wife. And if they're with me as you senior games to help me, I love them and I'll kiss every one of them.
Oh, his wife is in the car. Now, I think this is going to be the last Rescue 911 I post. Just to post 4 out of 6 Rescue 911s. Because my iPad was at 46% when I started this video. So it was probably down to 26, 20%. I don't know. I'll do heart attack, car save, runaway box cars.
This program contains true stories of rescues. All of the 911 calls you will hear are real. Whenever possible, the actual people involved have helped us reconstruct the events as they happened.
Now Rescue 911 on True Crime Network.
It was early on the morning of February 14th, 1989.
Next Rescue 911 on True Crime Network.
66-year-old businessman Leonard Moran was driving to meet some friends for breakfast, as he often did. But on this Valentine's Day, he would never make it to the restaurant.
Heart attack, car saved. Runaway box cars. Driver suffers heart attack. I bet this is heart attack, car saved.
The man in front of me,
Segment. And then the next segment is runaway box cars.
And I thought, well, maybe he might be picking up something or using a car phone. Because he did not come back up. For some reason, it just went in my head that this guy's having a heart attack. Something's not right here. And I knew that the car's got to be stopped.
Gallagher was approaching Leonard's car in the right-hand lane.
As I went around the car, my truck is so high, I looked down in it and I saw a man laid over the seat. And the only thing that went through my mind at first was, I've got to stop that car. Because if we get in the middle of that intersection, somebody's going to get hurt really bad. So I sped up.
I was running at full speed. I could just almost feel the muscles in my face being pulled back, trying to catch up with this car.
I pulled up 100 feet in front of the car, thinking that it would just hit the back of my truck and stop it before it got into the intersection.
His foot had come off the accelerator, the car was slowing down. I was trying to open the car door, and I could not keep my footing. I was hanging on the steering wheel. It did go through my mind, I'm fixing to be swept beneath the car. While hanging on with my right hand, I took my left hand and tried to put down the emergency brake. When I couldn't push down the emergency brake, I threw myself on top of him and threw it into the car. He was laying across the front of the seat, and I put my ear up to his mouth, and I couldn't hear any breathing. He was not breathing at all.
As we got there next to each other, I said, go call for help. I picked him up, put him in the middle of the street. He was a bluish color. Felt for a pulse. There wasn't a pulse. I felt for a heartbeat. There wasn't a heartbeat. He wasn't breathing. So I started CPR. I hadn't taken CPR in 15 years.
I ran to one house, there was no answer. I went to another house. It said, please, I said, please, someone help. I was scared. I thought he was dead.
True Crime Network used to be
It
the
was
Justice
real hard
Network.
doing it by yourself.
I love True Crime
I knew
Network.
I couldn't stop. There was no way you could stop. If you stopped, the man died.
When I went to the houses and no one would answer, I got discouraged because I remember I had taken CPR courses and I knew you've got 4 minutes to react before brain damage might set in, and I knew something had to be done fast for this gentleman.
In the paint store across the street, off-duty fireman Howard Taylor was working at his part-time job.
She came in and I heard her hollering somebody had a heart attack. But she was so upset. I told her, you call for help, I did CPR, and I go out and start CPR.
And that's when I grabbed the phone and called 911.
The call for help came in at 8:13 a.m. Rescue vehicles were immediately launched, but the nearest ambulance, with the life support equipment they needed to shock his heart into beating again, was 5 miles away.
I identified myself, identified him. I checked him out. He had no signs of life, no pulse, he wasn't breathing. I said, well, let's go, I gotta do it. And I started compressing.
When I started doing the mouth-to-mouth, his lips were blue, real blue. There was nothing. In my mind, he was dead.
When we continued,
Hours.
It's your chance
To find the bestest? Sign up today.
We would stop occasionally and check his pulse, but we never got a pulse. Never got a heartbeat.
Come on, fine. As we worked on it, it was in the back of my mind this guy wasn't gonna make it. But we kept doing CPR until he arrived. I've been fighting for 12 years. That's the first time a fighter ever looked at me.
fire department EMTs took over from Howard and Mark.
Okay, what we got here? Full pulse.
I got up, I was weak on my knees, big time. I wanted him to live real bad.
We did manage to get his car back before the factory arrived. And that went on, it was in their hands.
Y'all did a good job. Good job.
Paramedic Keith King and his partner arrived with a fully equipped ambulance and took charge of the situation.
When we arrived on the scene, they were doing very efficient CPR and had kept his condition from deteriorating any further.
Time was running out for Leonard Moran.
Initially, when we shot, he came back with no activity. After we gave a couple rounds of drugs, he came back into a rhythm, but he had no pulse. And at that point, I thought he was going to die.
I was very distraught after I realized that he didn't have any vital signs even after they hit him with those paddles.
I remember going up to him saying, how is he, how is he? And they said, we don't know, we don't know. I really thought the man was dead, but they always had second chance.
I was very concerned whether he was gonna make it or not. So I called Station 8. I asked him, I said, is Mr. Moran doing all right? He said, man, you did. You did. I said, I did what? He said, that man was alive. And yeah, he opened his eyes right when we got there.
17 minutes after his sudden death heart attack, Leonard Moran's heart finally began beating again.
I said, wow. I said, I did? He said, yeah, you did. You did.
Now they're playing basketball.
Leonard spent 2 weeks recuperating in the hospital, and he still faces
That must be
heart bypass
his
surgery. But his
grandchildren
prognosis is good.
that are.
He and his wife of 39 years, Mary Louise, have not forgotten the people who helped him that day.
Because there's kids out there. They're making baskets. They're doing a good job. He's trying to keep his wife from getting the ball.
Sometimes it's hard to talk about that. They're very special people to me.
After I saw Mr. Moran in the hospital, we were able to see that he was living. I'll never be able to describe that feeling. It's just a touching feeling that, hey, we've all pulled together, and everyone pulled together, and there, this man lived.
And about 3 weeks later, we all had dinner with him. And then he gave us a plaque. And it was a heart. And then you knew he was going to be all right.
And I think, if anything, through this situation, if I can emphasize how important CPR is, to know at least you can give a guy a second chance. You either can stand there and look.
Actually, if this guy was in his 70s in 1989, now that it's actually 2021, since
wonderful gift to get him back on St. Valentine's
more
Day.
than 30 years have passed since this happened, I don't actually think the guy's still living today.
I'm ready. Let me go.
And the guy's wife probably isn't still living.
If you are interested in learning CPR, contact your local office of the American.
Only?
1999.
On October 3rd, 1985, Michigan State Trooper David Hare was only an hour away from the end of his shift. But on this day, David would not be able to serve out his time uneventfully. Instead, he was forced to watch as a freak accident on a road outside Northville, Michigan, changed the lives it touched forever.
When a train is coming to a crossing, signals, lights, and guardrails are triggered to warn everyone to get off the tracks before hundreds of tons of steel roll through.
result of death is much higher with these than any other type of land accident. The comparative weight of a train and a car, there's just no match. The train itself weighs as much as 200 automobiles. So the engineer actually feels nothing when he hits a car.
Around 2 in the afternoon, George and Sophia
Now,
were
Rescue
driving west
911 on
7
True
Mile
Crime
Road
Network.
on their way to lunch. At the same time, 2 runaway boxcars were heading downhill towards 7 Mile Crossing. State Trooper David Hare was driving east toward the same crossing.
You got the right to remain silent. I want you to understand that, right? I was returning to the Northfield Post with a prisoner I had made an arrest for a larceny and some selling of narcotics in high school.
I think those boxcars separated from the train that they used to be attached to.
My thoughts at the time were, hurry up, because I had an hour left in my shift before I started a 4-day weekend.
There was no warning of the approaching boxcars.
I was just about to cross the tracks, and I didn't even notice or pay much attention to the vehicles approaching me coming from the other direction. All at once I saw something as large as a house.
Check it out.
And I remember thinking that there's no way anybody's gonna be alive in that car.
Dawn Kelly saw the collision from her van.
Boxcar came to the intersection, the blinking lights didn't flash, the gates didn't come down. I knew right away that the person who was sitting on the passenger side was going to be hurt.
There's still someone on the tracks, there's 2 boxcars and 1 vehicle. 16, North Road, 6 Mile. The people in the vehicle were my main concern. If anybody was alive, what kind of condition they were in, stopping the damn thing so we could get them out. The only thing I could think of was the brake wheel on the boxcar. I put my foot to the floor. My intention was not only to get ahead of the boxcars, but a 6 Mile road, I knew I could get up to the tracks relatively quickly. The bridge at 6 Mile was of great concern to me. The vehicle's not going to fit across that bridge. If it hits the bridge at any speed, I have no idea what's going to happen. If it's going to dislodge the vehicle, drop it onto the road underneath the bridge, just derail the boxcars, I have no idea. I was well ahead of the boxcars at this point. They were traveling 40 miles an hour or so when they entered the intersection, and I'm sure we're slowing due to the vehicle lodged in the front. When I got into view, I could see an elderly gentleman waving out his driver's window at me. Your mind races a million miles an hour in a situation like that. I remember thinking that if I wait to the end of the second boxcar, it's obviously the safest place to board, but there may not be brake wheel there. I left the board between the boxcars, hoping that one car or the other would have a brake wheel. When I made contact with that handrail, it deceived me. That sucker going a whole lot faster than I thought. I could tell that the driver was okay. Physically, he appeared to be in good shape. There's no massive bleeding externally or anything at that point. The passenger was critically injured.
I ran back to the patrol car, radioed the post, told them that we needed emergency and rescue.
That cop is a hero, because he got on top of the boxcars and turned the
When David had
wheel
first
to
gone
try
the
to stop it.
He had left his prisoner unattended.
I knew who he was, and no major thing to find him again. So he was far from being my primary concern at that point. I couldn't see any reason to take him from the vehicle without medical assistance. Just in case, you know, a collision at that speed, you gotta have some kind of neck injury. I was reaching down through the windows in order to try to get vital signs in the passenger or render whatever aid I could at that point. There wasn't much I could do at that point. He was ashen, he was in shock. There's no doubt about that. I didn't tell him anything about his wife. I didn't know what to tell him.
Yeah.
I didn't see you.
I know you didn't, sir. I didn't either, okay? I didn't see it either. What? Okay, I didn't see it. Okay, sir. All right, stay right there.
In order to get the passenger out, we had to cut the roof supports on the vehicle and peel the roof somewhat off the car.
George Jokic and his wife were taken to the hospital where he was treated and released. Celine died within hours. George and Celine had been married for 43 years.
That's sad that his wife didn't survive.
Very fruitful, got 2 daughters. Now I have 3 grandchildren. And she was a very good woman.
4 years later, George has made a new life for himself. He's married again to a woman he'd known for years.
You gotta realize that there's nothing you can do.
At least he found somebody to share his life with.
And I mourned and going, but I realized nothing can be changed. We just gotta go on living.
He and Trooper David Hare have become close friends.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for David here. And if that train pushed me any further, I might have went over the bridge at 6 Mile.
This guy is full of life, full of fun, full of jokes, full of the devil a lot of the time. In my opinion, it just wasn't his time. You know, you see a poor guy that's stuck in a car, and he's going sideways on the tracks, and he's not going to live a lot longer. He's not going to. The car's being ate up. He's approaching a narrow bridge. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you're going to stand there and watch it go by? And hope for the best? Or
9:53, it's almost 10. Ooh, they're having pizza. They ordered pizza.
Courageous as hell. Very courageous for what he did. And I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. Because it gave me the opportunity to really, you know, live out my life.
I'm going to end this live stream in less than 10 minutes because it'd be 10 o'clock then. Now I'm going to YouTube. See, it says your current live streams. Rescue 911, True Crime, Justice Network, Parrot Save, Teen Angel. These are gymnastics videos. Okay, just how long is it gonna be till it's 10 p.m.? That's what I want to know. Streamium. Streamium is live TV and DVR.
Thanks for using locast.org, the non.
Let's see, I'll be able to see what time it is.
Profit.
Okay, I turned my TV off. I did give this video a thumbs up because it's a good video. Now no one's watching it. Now this is going to be my last TV show live stream. I might do a couple videos, but they'll be short videos. I hope I reach 5K subscribers like in the next couple of days. I had my iPad in the holder. Yeah, it's actually 10. It's actually after 10. I know it says 9:01, but the microwave and the oven haven't been changed since daylight savings time. I'm going to end this live stream. I did 2 long live streams because the first one I did were 2 women's gymnastics meets. Now I did like Rescue 911, like 4 episodes, as well as animal outtakes. I guess I just don't have time to put dog tails on here, but I do put that on here, and I put animal rescues on. Well, this video is probably longer than 2 hours, 20 minutes. I'm going to end this live stream now.